اليوم اليوم محاضرتنا راح تكون بالانجليزي لانه البرزنتر will have a preference to that language. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's presentation, which is titled Why City Design is Important. I'm pleased to introduce our presenter tonight, Mr. Hassan Al-Saffar, the youngest member of our forum. Hassan has been quite active in the forum, for this is his third presentation since he joined our fold. He delivered 2 presentations earlier, one on the cryptocurrency and the other one on the loneliness epidemic. Hassan was born in 1997. He graduated from Fleming College in 2020 and holds a diploma in computer security and investigations. He currently works on a full-time basis at IBM as an IT security services specialist. He also works part-time as a self-employed personal support worker. He is an industry certified cybersecurity professional with certifications from some well-known industry giants such as Com, TIA, Alchemy, Cisco, and Fortinet. I wish Hassan every success in tonight's presentation. The presentation will last for 40 minutes to be followed by a questions period. Our session will end at 10:30 exactly. I would kindly request all members to put themselves on mute. Thanks for listening. The floor is yours, Hassan. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Safa, and thank you everybody for joining, taking the time out of your busy day to view my presentation on why city design is important. So I will begin by sharing my screen and begin. So to start this presentation, we'll focus on the importance of good city design and the pros and the cons of bad city design and its impact on society in terms of the economic, social, and health factors. This presentation aims to make a case for walkable city design that puts people first. So to go over what I will be talking about today, I will give a brief introduction which follows into the brief history of transportation across Canada and the US. And then I will make a case for walkable cities and go into details about the dangers of poor city design, the benefits of good city design, and then follow in with challenges and solutions that we face as a society when trying to transition from car-dependent urban sprawl to more walkable and livable communities that better serve the common good, followed by a conclusion and Q&A, of course. So before going into the main course, I wanted to tell a story with as they call it in English, a parable that with the theme of social conditioning and conformity. So the study goes like this. There are, in a study by a few scientists, they placed 4 monkeys in a room with a ladder leading to bananas hanging from a ceiling. When the first monkey tries to climb the ladder, it triggers a trap that sprays them all with cold water. Because of the discomfort and discouragement by this trap, eventually any monkey attempting to climb the ladder is every monkey trying to climb the ladder is pulled down by the other monkeys just to avoid the unpleasant spray of cold water, even after even after the mechanism or the trap has long been deactivated. Over time, the old monkeys are swapped with the new monkeys, and this behavior, despite never being experienced by the new monkeys, what I'm trying to say is over time, the new monkeys are introduced to the room and adopt the same behavior, despite never experiencing the cold spray of water themselves. They learn through they learn because they learn to prevent any ladder climbing without understanding why. This continues until none of the original monkeys are left, yet the behavior persists long after any monkey has ever been sprayed with cold water. The scientists then pulled one of the monkeys out of the room and asked him, "So why did you try to stop any monkey trying to get the bananas at the top of the ladder?" And the monkey said, "I don't know, that's just how things are done around here." This story illustrates how practices can endure in groups beyond the original reason. This emphasizes the power of learned behavior and the importance of critical thinking and questioning existing traditions and practices, which ties into the presentation about city design and how we should question the way we do things and think of better ways to live, not because and overcome the fact or the need to continue to do things just because it's the way it's done. So I wanted to talk about a brief introduction into the current status of urban design in North American cities. So there are a couple key things that poor urban design and sprawl and car dependency does that negatively impacts people and society in general and civilization. Car dependency causes a significant contribution to pollution and gas emissions. This causes bad air quality, which can lead to health issues such as poor lung health and heart diseases amongst people. Because of the sprawl of these urban centers that focus on low density and car dependent infrastructure, it causes inefficient use of land and also destroys natural habitats and biodiversity, and it becomes less efficient and more costly for public services. It also causes socioeconomic divides. It negatively impacts people who only have cars as a means to transport themselves, and gives people on the lower income a disadvantage, the disadvantages of car ownership and maintenance, as well as negative public health and safety with people's lifestyles. They don't move as much, they don't exercise as much, causing obesities and other related issues. As well as the dangers of traffic accidents and fatalities associated with cars, and also the economic costs, the infrastructure needed to maintain these expensive highways, and just inefficient forms of travel. But the one important thing to know is urban design is constantly changing and evolving, and people are thinking of new ways to live and design existing cities with a focus more on walkability, integration, and accessibility. So a brief history into Canada and US. There's a common saying that America and Canada as well was built by the railroad, but over time it's been replaced by the car. And often people who argue for public transportation, people who argue against public transportation rather, a common misconception is that rails would be inefficient because we live in a big country. Yet they ignore the obvious history and fact that Canada and the US existed long before automotives and had trains that could take you all across the country. Not the case anymore. We've actually regressed back into car dependency and sprawl. The railways in America date back to the 19th and 20th century and have a very deep and crucial role in the settlement, commerce, and industry of both Canada and the US, and allow people to move with great speed at a time where mobility was a challenge. And this had big impacts on social and culture. It changed the paradigm, but now we face challenges with innovations due to the rail sector needs for modernization, its lack of modernization, and adapting to changing economic and environmental concerns. In this day and age, in the 21st century, more innovation is needed, especially in North America and Canada, to overcome these challenges, not to diminish the history of the railroad and its significance. So going into the pros and cons of walkable cities and car-dependent cities, there are environmental, economic, and social impacts such as increased pollution, carbon emissions, habitat destruction, but there's also a hidden cost of car-centric infrastructure, such as high maintenance, congestion, indirect health costs, and also social impacts such as increased isolation and loneliness, inequality, and the reliance on cars reduces people's abilities to move around and be mobile throughout their communities, since they have no other options in transporting themselves and only have to rely on one source of transportation, which is the car. So it's very bad for people who are necessarily get anxious while driving, people who struggle with maintaining focus, and it also gives there's lots of negative health impacts associated with congestion, being stuck in traffic. And there's multiple studies that show that a daily commute to work by car causes increased risk in anxiety, depression, and worse memory and other key mental functions compared to people who take public transportation to fulfill their daily errands. These people tend to report higher levels of happiness. They also enjoy the ability to have more time to themselves and to relax, and they do report that taking trains is a more pleasant experience as a way of moving themselves. Another thing that people don't consider when we talk about cities and car dependency is actually noise pollution. Noise pollution has a greater impact on human psychology and physical well-being than people tend to realize. Studies show that people who live in cities where decibel levels are much higher than where the average is between 60 to 90 have a lower life expectancy. They live they don't live as long, they're less likely to engage in their communities, they're less likely to talk to others, and they're less likely to volunteer. Noise pollution from these poorly designed cities centered around cars can lead to increased stress levels. Constant noise from traffic contributes to higher stress levels, affecting mental health, causing higher levels of anxiety and depression. It also affects people's ability to sleep, especially during the night in metropolises and very dense urban centers like New York City. You notice that, especially I heard that Cairo was a city that never sleeps. It can be very hard for people to get good quality of sleep, which, as you may know, it's obvious that good quality sleep is the foundation of anybody's health. And it can lead to insomnia and long-term subtle effects on your physical and mental well-being. It also leads to impaired cognitive functioning. Prolonged exposure to traffic noise can affect children and adults alike, resulting in worse memory, attention, and problem-solving skills. And of course, hearing loss can be a result of living in places that are very noisy and have poor design. Like an example, I know the Netherlands, there's a lot of cities in the Netherlands, they have strict laws on noise pollution and have a limit on what's acceptable noise in certain areas of the city. And they strictly enforce it because they care so much about their communities, and as well as cardiovascular, as well as other health risks. And also it leads to people isolating themselves more without them realizing it, less outdoor activity. It makes it harder for people to communicate with each other, and it can be a barrier for community events. It can make it harder for people to organize festivals, gatherings, and these noise levels are a huge distraction and takes away from these pleasant experiences. Poor city design makes us all feel unsafe in the literal and figurative sense, and it especially affects women and children, as they are the most affected by poor city design. There's this concept in cities called eyes on the street. So eyes on the street basically refers to how people feel more safe in public spaces when there's lots of other people around. Because of this, there's less likely for crime to take place in crowded in areas where there's lots of visibility by other people. It's minimal pedestrian traffic and limited visibility, and natural surveillance, which is the technical term for it, that contributes to this safety is taken away in car-dependent urban areas. This makes streets feel unwelcoming and unsafe, especially for children and women who might feel vulnerable in these environments. Car-dependent cities also lead to isolated public spaces, segregated land uses, and sprawling designs create empty parks, empty playgrounds, not because people don't want to go outside, but because to get to these places you need to drive, and not everybody can drive. Usually these places with good city design naturally have people come to these areas because they're walkable, accessible, and have a high level of cohesion. And especially for children who can't drive, and younger people who rely on walking and biking and taking public transportation to get around. car-dependent cities pose a major hazard to pedestrians, people walking on the street, as it's very common for pedestrians to die due to careless driving, poor design, and lack of safety features such as road bumps, speed limits, and winding roads that are designed to slow traffic through not just speed bumps, but also making winding roads will naturally force people to slow down. An example would be roundabouts as a good feature of implementing safety into car traffic, making pedestrians feel safer. Also, poor city design leads to the reduced independence for children, as children now rely on their parents to get to places, like to get to their friend's house, to get to work, to get to school. So because children are now forced to take cars because they live in areas that are very anti-pedestrian, they miss out on opportunities to socialize, meet other kids, play in their community. And this also impacts the parents, as now they don't feel safe in letting their children explore their neighborhoods and play outside, and has led to further isolation, especially amongst the youth. So they miss out on a lot of chances to make friends and engage with the natural world, as well as poor lighting and visibility contributes to an unsafe feeling. And especially from women, these unwelcoming, unsafe places lead to a fear of harassment, and children's and parents' fear of their children being abducted due to the lack of natural surveillance or eyes on the street. Natural sight lines or natural monitoring can decrease the risk of unwanted encounters, making spaces feel more safe for everyone. And that will make people want to go out more, more chances to socialize, etc., etc. So another feature of poor city design that really affects us all is suburban sprawl, and the rise of food deserts. And the root cause of all these things is how our zoning laws are made. Bad zoning laws have a great impact on how our city looks, feels, and functions. And it's very pervasive in all our aspects of life. So the negative impacts of suburban sprawl would be it forces car dependency. It causes a loss of agricultural or natural lands. So people, they don't have the opportunity to, say, grow their own food. They don't have the opportunity to make their own gardens. Well, not make their own gardens. They can still garden, but they lose the ability to participate in nature. They have less accessibility to trails, they're less likely to go on hikes, they're less likely to venture out and explore the natural world, which causes further habitat destruction, lack of awareness, and a reduced capacity for people to grow their own food. This also leads to higher infrastructure costs because of the extensive sprawl. Because everything is so spread out, cities have to spend more on plumbing, they have to spend more on hydro, just to support these sprawling, endless neighborhoods that all look the same, which puts a financial strain on local cities, and which ends up taking more money out of the taxpayers' pockets, which is us. And of course, this leads to reduced opportunities for physical activity and increased isolation. And to describe what a food desert is, basically, a food desert is an area that with bad zoning that has a lack of mixed zoning laws. So, example, in Canada, it's very common for people when they have to go buy food, they have to get in their car and drive to a grocery store. Where in other places, like in Europe, for example, people they can walk to their nearest supermarket or convenience is only a 5 to 10 minute walk away. So because of this lack of access to food, it forces people to get in their cars and makes the problem even worse. How we can fix this is actually encourage cities to go back to mixed zoning so that people they live close to where they shop, where they eat, and where they work, instead of having to rely on cars to to get to these important places. So I also wanted to go into what makes a city walkable. Cities should be a place where people drive to, not a place where people drive through. We need to think of cities as a place as an end destination and not somewhere we drive through on our way to other places. And what I mean by that is there needs to be a seamless integration of walking, cycling, biking, as well as the ability to drive. I'm not saying that we should get rid of cars completely, but if we want to transport ourselves or go somewhere else, we should the car should not be the only option. I believe people should have multiple options when it comes to getting around their city. And cities at the end of the day have to be a place where people go to and not just another place to get stuck in traffic. So what makes a walkable city is infrastructure that's friendly to pedestrians. So sidewalks and crosswalks that are wide and continuous. I have a problem, like I see this all the time, especially even walking in downtown where you would think it's more walkable, is where you're walking on a sidewalk and then it suddenly ends. And you have to cross a dangerous street to get to the other side to get to where you're going to. So just just in the design of these cities, we don't think about people. We prioritize cars, which is wrong. Um, Also, pedestrian bridges and underpasses, which allow people to cross through high density traffic safely without having to go out of their way to take a long and inconvenient route to get to their destination if they don't like the option of driving. But because of these poor designs, it forces people to take the car, even if they don't want to, even for short distances, because there's just no infrastructure that allows them to walk to places that are close to them. Um, Also, walkable cities introduce things like traffic calming measures, like speed bumps, curb extensions, uh, pedestrian islands to slow down vehicles and that prioritize people's safety. Also, as I mentioned before, mixed use development, so the integration of where people live, shop, work, eat, doesn't have to all have its own separate sections. They can all be integrated into one dense urban center. And people, especially in Canada and the US, they lack options when it comes to housing. People are only usually have only two choices when it comes to the type of house they live in. They can either live in a high-rise condo or in a large four-bedroom house in the suburbs. Walkable cities offer a range of housing types and include mixed use areas to accommodate various income levels. So if a person can't afford a big house in the suburb, they have the option of living in a more dense area, in a small and have a smaller footprint. And this supports people across all income levels and doesn't just benefit the rich. and it allows for a diversity of communities, as well as accessible public transportation, reliable transportation, seamless connectivity between different modes of public transportation, such as buses, seamless connectivity between buses, trains, ferries, biking, etc. And also green and open spaces. Walkable cities have a lot of parks, natural foliage, which also give the give the benefits of better managing what is it? Downpours, natural disasters, helping with noise pollution, making buildings more efficient when it comes to energy, better carbon capture, and better quality, better air quality, which gives a lot of health benefits in of itself. Walkable city, finally, my final point, walkable cities also are safe and inviting. Walkable cities have adequate lighting design that focus on visibility and safety, and they focus on beauty and public furniture, street furniture, public works of art, such as planters, art installations that make things aesthetic and encourages people to go out and view these places, which then also has the benefit of to businesses and commerce. Since more people are out, they're more likely to spend money at a store they walk by. And of course, walkable cities are well maintained and they're very clean, because a dirty city has a big impact on people's ability to move and get through, and it makes it more unpleasant, less likely for people to go out. So I've talked a lot about how the benefits of walkable cities, so I'll make this brief, but there's a huge benefit when it comes to physical health. It includes a routine of physical activity that people don't have to think about. People have less health issues due to reduced pollution. It just leads to a benefit in mental health, less anxiety, less stress, because of green spaces, less noise pollution, and more opportunities to socialize and interact. And also the economic benefits. Walkable businesses in walkable areas have their foot traffic increased, which leads to an increase of people spending their money, being customers, and supporting the local economy instead of all the money being funneled into big box office stores and corporations. And also it leads to an increase in property values as people tend to desire to live in areas that are walkable, which is a great, which leads to higher prosperity for people who live in these places, who own real estate in these places, and so on. And they're just more sustainable, sorry. And they're just more sustainable because of the greenery. So another concept that's important and that people don't realize is a benefit of walkable cities is what we call the exercise of life. As I said before, in cities that depend on cars or are poorly designed and only focus on the mobility of cars and not people, it turns exercise into a planned activity instead of it being spontaneous. In a walkable city, you don't have to think about spending time thinking about planning to go to the gym, because most people would get their exercise they need by going to work, doing their daily errands, which leads to multiple health benefits. Drawing from my own experience, when I visited Italy, I didn't see a single obese person in areas where there was high walkability. And even though the Italian diet consists a lot of tomatoes, carbs, butter, cheese, and pasta, I still didn't see a single fat person. And it's amazing to me how effortless it is for people living in these countries that have dense, walkable communities for them to stay fit. But when you live in North America, it's so difficult to maintain a healthy weight. And I think the main cause of that is how we live, our daily routines, and how these places like that require you to drive your car all the time encourage you to be obese and fat. So what ends up happening is only people who are healthy, physical health is only afforded to the people who have the time, who have the money, and who can make the effort. So it leaves people who are always busy with work, people who are always busy with other commitments, unhealthy and struggling to fit exercise into their routine. In a walkable city, we wouldn't have this problem. Also, um, walkable cities allow you better access to amenities like pools, parks, tennis courts, basketball courts, so on and so forth, and and introduce the seamless integration of leisure, fun, and recreation. We need to make walkable cities more of a priority so that we can take better care of our health without putting in as much effort to do so. There are a few examples of walkable cities in the world that I want to talk about. The famous one is Denmark. Denmark is famous for its bicycle network. It's famous for its pedestrian-only zones, and it's famous for its coordination of cyclist traffic. So many people ride their bikes in Denmark that they actually have dedicated street lights and intersections for bicycles, as which is funny because we usually think of traffic lights being associated with cars, but it's an opposite in Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark. And this makes things more safe, enjoyable, and allows people to enjoy being outside more. Another famous one is Barcelona, Spain. The city of Barcelona mastered the art of public spaces. In Barcelona, you can walk 10, 15 minutes and end up in a plaza. And in this plaza, you'll see people playing, talking, interacting, just naturally. Nothing is planned. It all happens spontaneously, and it allows for people to socialize, meet their neighbors, which provides many benefits in mental and physical health, as well as their masterful integration of public transportation, allowing for people to walk and go anywhere without ever setting foot in a car. Another city that's done this well is, which is actually in the US, is called the city of Portland, which is in Oregon. Portland, Oregon has another extensive bicycle network, and it encourages people to take their bikes due to the supporting infrastructure. It has pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods and great accessibility of public transportation. These cities give a good example how policies and investment in walkable design can transform our urban spaces to make things more healthy for us, more sustainable in the long term, and make cities an enjoyable place to live. So the big problem with changing car-dependent cities is overcoming the resistance and what young people have come up. People have come up with a term for people who are resistant to change. They are called NIMBYs, which is an acronym for Not in My Backyard. These people, as described, when somebody goes to their local city hall to advocate for more walkable spaces, more public transportation, etc., these people are very reluctant to change and resist new ideas because they're so used to the way they're so used to their car, and they don't like the idea of their neighborhoods changing, that they resist these changes in walkable city design. So to address these concerns, what we need to do is focus on education and awareness, and have campaigns that educate the public on the long-term benefits of walkable cities, and counter and argue against the perceptions and the inconveniences it would cause. We also need to show the benefits of walkable cities, and we also need to overcome the lack of political will by our public officials. Political leaders need to have more commitment and have a better vision of transforming our cities and setting clear goals and policies that benefit us in the long term. And collaboration between small businesses and residents can help move this along. So these things will take time, and retrofitting these cities can happen in small stages. So we need to slowly transition through incremental improvements, such as making sidewalks bigger, adding bike lanes, improving existing crossings for people. We can also have small projects in select areas, kind of like little experiments, to see how people find these walkable areas, and gather feedback and adjust, as well as taking a look at our zoning and policies, and also partnering with the private sector. So in conclusion, to recap, walkable cities have a benefit for physical and mental health, the economy, the environment, and improve our social cohesion and equality. And we need the government to act. We need the community to be more involved, and we need to become more informed, spread awareness, support local initiatives, engage with our local governments, and lead by example. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope that it was informative, and I hope that you all enjoyed our discussion today.